of Silver Lining Podcast. I'm Adam. Always with me is my Uncle Rex. Welcome back to, we usually are on Saturday. Today we're doing Sunday just because uh, I wanted to have a guest on. I've been wanting to have Paige on our show for a while now. And as our podcast has progressed, I feel like we're getting to points where we're having different guests on and finding out that a lot of optimists have different problems in life and can learn and grow. And our big one of my biggest things about doing this podcast is always learning and growing new things. So Paige Alexander is our guest, and I known Paige. When you go to church with somebody and you meet somebody and you guys click and bond, and you have similar things that you like as far as exercise and foods and those kinds of things. Paige and I made a good connection, and I started inviting Paige on my radio show when I was in Wichita. So Paige would come on the radio show and really help a lot of people with food things and bring in some food things that were healthy and very tasteful. And so she's got a unique gift when it comes to food. So Paige, first, before I go any more, welcome to Silver Lining Podcast, and thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Nice to connect with you again.
Yes. So Paige has started something, which used to come on my radio show. We would talk about foods that are healthy, foods that can actually taste good that aren't healthy. And so I've tricked Rex because Rex thinks this is a regular podcast, but this is actually Rex is addicted to an ice cream called Bluebell ice cream. And we're having a moment here where we're just going to have to figure out how to get Rex out of Bluebell ice cream.
This is an intervention, huh?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Tricked ya.
It's a trick. Now, Rex, this is for you. No, but seriously, Rex does have an addiction to Bluebell ice cream.
Many people do. I mean, sugar is the most addictive, I think, substance on the planet.
Yes. So we have a lot of optimists that have had trauma in their life. That as Rex has said on this podcast so many times, nobody is spared. Everybody in life has to go through sometimes really, really hard things. And so with this podcast, I felt like having you on and being able to help people with maybe their thought process when it comes to food, because we do all have issues with trauma and then eating certain foods. But just give us a little rundown, because I know you have a partner, you guys have a website, you're helping a lot of people with food. So tell us about addictions and all the different stuff. Just give us an opening thing about your.
Sure. So my partner, Jamie Morgan Reno, and I started a podcast called Real Food Recovery. And from there, just a natural offshoot was an online food addiction recovery community. And we've had that for about a year and a half, the podcast and the recovery community, because so many people are addicted to these highly processed foods, which is nothing to be ashamed of, because your body is just reacting exactly how these foods were designed to make your body react. And it is a huge problem. We've got a tremendous health crisis on our hands right now in America, with 70% of our country that's overweight or obese. We've got a huge crisis on our hands, and it's getting worse. And we're going to see a collapse in our medical system if something doesn't change. So that is how it started for us. And so we have, like I said, our podcast all devoted to people trying to recover from the effects of processed food. And you were talking about trauma. And I often say that we are only as old as our first trauma, because so many people stop maturating at that time. We've all had trauma, little t trauma, big T trauma. But the problem is what it does to the upstairs, our noggin. It's very difficult whenever you have had trauma to deal with that in a healthy way, so that it doesn't, what's the word? it doesn't want to hinder your progress in life. It doesn't want to affect relationships. It doesn't want to affect your job. It doesn't want to affect your happiness. It doesn't want to affect your opportunities in life. But unfortunately, trauma can do that. And it's very closely related to people that use food to numb themselves. And oftentimes people are thinking that people that have addictions are trying to, get high and elevate themselves. But the truth of the matter is, once you become addicted to something, those reward pathways in the brain become so down regulated that most people are just trying to get out of pain, back up to baseline. They really aren't trying to get high. They just want to be out of pain. And so that's people often turn to food for a numbing. And the problem is it does work temporarily, and you do have that fire hose of dopamine release with these ultra processed foods, but followed by the fire hose is also the crash that comes afterwards. And then you're caught up in this treadmill of up, down, that blood sugar spiking up and down all day. And really, to function best as humans, we really want that slow trickling dopamine and blood sugar to just kind of be there in the middle. We would love our blood sugar to hang out between 80 and 120, and we just want these little waves all day long. But those blood sugar spikes and crashes are just brutal on the system. So anyway, at Real Food Recovery, we take a holistic look. We don't just say, here's your food plan, here's what you should eat. In fact, we actually say the only thing that we tell people to do is eat whole single ingredient foods. And we make sure they're getting enough sleep. We make sure they're getting movement in their life. We make sure there's some level of spirituality. And I'm not pushing religion. We're not here to say that. But when life kicks you in the teeth, and you got to have a place bigger than yourself to go for comfort. Otherwise, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So those are our 4 main cornerstones
Yeah.
of our recovery program. And that's where we start with people.
So when you mentioned, you started mentioning things like, and Rex and I have dealt with, guests coming on the podcast that have said, myself or my kids have chosen drugs or alcohol to lessen their pain of life. So do you still put food in that same category as,
Absolutely.
and do people die from eating bad food as much as people die from alcohol or die from drugs?
I have so much to say about what you just said. So let me tell you a few statistics. There's almost 2 million people that die every year from diet-related disease. That's optional deaths. The majority of our deaths are diseases that are 9/10 of the diseases we have are impacted by our diet. Let's talk about diabetes, heart disease, cancers. They're calling Alzheimer's diabetes 3 now. I mean, more and more evidence is showing up about how directly impactful our diets are. Think about this. And so my background, I have a nursing degree and a wellness coaching degree. So every single bite of food you take goes into your cells. That's what feeds your body. Inside your cells, there's these little mitochondria. You might think of them as little factories with busybodies in there, ledgering every bite you eat to the good or to the bad. Every single bite you eat is ledgered to either cellular aging or cellular repair. So you can go in either direction with every single bite that you take. And processed food. So are you familiar with how, let me just tell you a quick story. Back in the 70s, do you remember, you're maybe too young, but do you remember the Marlboro Man?
Yes.
He was,
I'm not too young for the Marlboro Man that came on TV in the commercial, and he's like all sexy, and he's got the thing.
I wanted to marry him. He was it for me. I had found I was 7. The heart wants what the heart wants. But they discovered, and back then those tobacco commercials were on TV, billboards, magazines, if you remember all that. and people were dropping like flies. So they said, you can't advertise anymore. Obviously, tobacco sales went down. So these tobacco companies said, I know what we're going to do. We're going to go in and purchase these processed food companies, RJ Reynolds, Philip Morris, General Mills, all those. And we're going to engineer these foods to make them as highly palatable as possible. We're going to add the most salt, oil, and sugar to get these foods to the highest bliss point, because we know that it will addict the brains. They knew without telling anybody, we will addict these people to these foods. 80% of our grocery stores are made up of processed foods.
80%?
80% with a shelf life of, I don't know.
Yeah.
A long time.
I've seen the McDonald's French fry was like 3 years old and it still looks exactly the same.
That's what I'm saying. So yeah. They changed the food. They started marketing. They started putting more cereal commercials on Saturday mornings, marketing to children, and they made the food cheaper. So they have become gazillionaires, and now we've got a society that's making us fat, sick, and miserable. And we've got big pharma that's come in that subsidizes 75% of the FDA is subsidized by big pharma. We have the big pharma subsidizing medical schools that have little to an hour of nutrition courses a day, when 9/10 of our diseases come from foods that we eat. And they're just, so we're making people sick, and then we're putting them on the pharma treadmill. And if we can get kids sick early, then we've got a customer for life. So now I can't remember what the exact question was, but yes.
You mentioned do people die of food instead of drugs or alcohol? And on the same level, and it's probably even higher.
Yes, because let me tell you, the center brain is where your addictions are all held. It doesn't matter if it's drugs, alcohol, food, porn, shopping, whatever. The brain doesn't know. The tongue doesn't know if it's cocaine or sugar. It goes straight to the brain. So that's where all the mechanisms take place, is happening in the center brain. And we talked a little bit earlier about whenever you're cued or triggered, you're stressed or you have trauma, what people want is out of pain. Even people that, usually if people commit suicide for various reasons, but mostly people don't want to die. They just want out of pain. It's that severe. And at that time, you don't have access to your rational thought, your frontal lobe, that braking center, the logic center, the long-term consequences, all those things.
Do you think
literally the blood flow moves.
Oh yeah. Do you think food for physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, like what pain does food help these people go to food for? Which one of those pains, or all of them?
Yes, is my answer. Yes. Anytime you're upset, let's start from childhood. You get teased. You come home and mommy says, here's a sucker. You go get a shot at the doctor. Let's give you a sucker. You're middle school and somebody broke up with you. You want to go home and you're comforted with food. It's a comforting mechanism. The problem with food is, versus any of the other addictions, food is the hardest, because you have to keep eating. And not only that, you can't go 10 feet without a neon sign somewhere promoting it. You can't go buy dog food without candy bars at the checkout counter. And so you're hamstrung. I mean, it takes a lot for people that have food addiction to cure this, which is why we have a support group, because you can't do it on your own. If you could, you would have by now, and you haven't. It's just very hard, because think about how often you could get your drug of choice if you were a food addict in this society we're living in. Like I said, it's set up to make us fat, sick, and miserable.
So, and people can ask Paige any questions that they want. If they have any questions, feel free to send your questions, and we can ask those. Rex will moderate, and Missy will moderate, and get those questions on. And if you want to start with that, Rex, you want a few before I go further?
Sure. Terry's expressing what a lot of us are feeling here. She said, "This is eye-opening. Wow." So Mary S. Curie, that's a good name for this particular subject, Mary Curie, Marie Curie. I'm definitely a sugarholic. A few years ago, I gave up sugar for a whole year and lost 50 pounds.
Very good. Good job.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's huge.
The
And
question I have is, how do you give up after eating sugar so much? How do you actually give it up? Like, I don't know how your body would function. Do you just start shaking like if you were on drugs or alcohol, or is it painful to get rid of sugar?
so let's talk about sugar detox. And this is really important where a support group comes in, because you're led by people who have gone through it. And yes, when I say a detox, you are going to go through a detox for 3 to 5 days. But once you're over it, then I would love to say the cravings go completely away. They never go completely away. They go from a 9 or a 10 to a 3 or 4. I just say it's manageable. And so what happens is your taste buds will change over time. So God loves us so much that he's willing to be on our side when we're getting rid of these things that Mother Nature never intended us to eat. What I tell people is, look on your plate. Everything on your plate should have a life cycle of some sort. If it's never been alive or touched things that aren't alive, you probably shouldn't be eating it. If it has a shelf life of years, we want to eat food that's going to rot within a week or two. That's things that have been somehow living. Your fruits, your vegetables, your meats, your grains, everything has had life. Eggs, everything's had life attached to it. So yes, you need to go through cold turkey. You can't just trickle off sugar, because as long as you have it in your system, it will still be in your system. You will still have cravings. And the goal is to get it out of your system and get rid of the cravings, so you're not fighting that. Nobody wants to fight that anymore.
So, what if you go 80% great diet, but then 20% I'm having a rocky road from Baskin Robbins, or I'm having this or this like once a week or twice a week or whatever it is. Is there something bad about, not cutting sugar out completely?
Yeah, I'll tell you what's bad
there's
about
something
keeping
bad.
it in.
Rocky Road is the wrong flavor. That's what's bad.
Blasphemy.
Rocky Road is the Baskin Robbins. Rocky Road is the best ice cream.
Yeah. So the problem with having a little bit is that you're having a little bit. The goal is to get rid of the cravings, right? So if you want to go back and have it again, you're going to wake up those demons. We want the brain to be quiet. This is a disorder of the brain. That's where the cravings come from. Cravings are not normal, by the way. And a calm brain does not crave. So if you're having cravings, there's something going on.
Well,
So
my brain is not calm. I can tell you that right now.
Are you on sugar?
Well, being diabetic, there's sometimes when my blood sugar goes low that I indulge in sugar to raise my blood sugar. Now, I don't know if I'm doing it, but I have to stay alive.
Yeah. So, what were we talking about?
That's my excuse anyways, Paige.
Yeah. So, right. So anyway, you really don't want to go back. I've been off sugar for 3.5 years. I even gave up the plant-based sweeteners because it kept the cravings alive. And the problem with people with sugar addiction, they're having binges. That's the problem. It's a dark, dark place that you cannot stop. I used to say I couldn't stop till it was all gone, or I was too sick to carry on, and I'm no quitter. So usually I made sure that, I just hung in there till it was all gone. And
you remember Kareth on our radio show that you were on?
Yeah.
Kareth told me a story because I was like, with the Oreo cookie, I was like, I can put one Oreo cookie in milk, have my taste, I get to taste it, I know what it feels like again, I get that satisfaction, and that's it. She goes, she can't do that.
You're a freak.
She'll eat the whole bag of Oreo cookies. She can't stop.
And her story is much more normal than yours. And so let me just say, it's a spectrum. The food addiction is a spectrum, and we can test people. We give about 11 questions, and we can see where you fall on the spectrum. But most people are severely addicted, which is why 70% of our population is overweight or obese.
Yeah.
Children is the fastest growing area.
So
But
let me,
your taste buds do change, and you don't crave it as much. It is very controllable after you get off of it.
Okay.
let's clarify this, Paige, if you would, this comment by Mary that's on the screen. She says it's really hard because sugar is in absolutely everything we eat. So could you, and which,
I love that. Yeah, I'm glad we're going
would
to talk
you
about that.
clarify when you're talking about this specifically, which sugars you're talking about?
Right. So I'm talking about added sugar. And so what's not added sugar is your fruits, your vegetables, your grains, your meats, your proteins, your eggs, things like that. So I don't know if she means fructose that's in fruit, but when I talk about sugar, I am talking about added sugar. And the things with fruit is it's got fiber. So I don't mind things that have fiber and water. The ultimate goal is to have 25, to 35 and more grams of fiber a day. Why? Why do I want that? Because fiber is what helps control the blood sugar spikes in our system. The more fiber and water you have in something like in your fruits and vegetables, it's a slow, gentle rise of the blood sugar, a steady state, and gentle drop versus those spikes that we want to avoid because this crashes follow spikes, and then you're in that super hungry, super craving mode all day, and your pancreas is working really hard to keep up with that lifestyle. So we want to basically rely on our food to control our blood sugar, not insulin. Obviously, if you're type 1, that doesn't apply to you, but type 2 people can definitely control their insulin and maybe not even have to take anything to help control that type 2 diabetes. And now 50% of people are pre-diabetic or diabetic these days.
Yeah. One of the things about fruit, real quick, and then we'll get to more questions, is that, being diabetic, you really study what fruits you can have, which doesn't. So grapes, bananas, pineapple are really high in sugar. Low in sugar are all berries like raspberry,
Right.
blueberry. So there's certain fruits that are less sugary
Strawberry.
that won't spike as much as other fruits.
That's right. Yeah, and there's a glycemic index scale that you can look up that will tell you where fruits are on as far as the sugars, but still better than ice cream.
Yes. Yeah, Rex.
Well, better is a relative term. Terry asks, yes, and you started to answer this about sugar specifically, but Terry asked, how long does it take to detox or feel the difference in removing additives food?
So for me, the one thing that I had to go cold turkey on was the sugar, because that's something that you can't just taper off of like some other things that you can do. But I'm just going to reiterate, sugar takes 3 to 5 days.
Mhm.
It's not going to be fun. But what you do is you set your environment, in advance. You have to be mentally ready. You try and get your house cleared out of all the trigger foods. If it's in your house, it's in your mouth. You hopefully can get your family on board to help you through that time period. And once you're over, by day 5, 6, you're going to start feeling better. Now, as far as, I'm not quite sure of the question if it means all the processed food, but I think
Say
you would just,
processed food.
okay,
Like chips or something you buy in a bag.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime. So let me put it to you this way. Our bodies were designed specifically, we were specifically engineered to eat single ingredient, non-processed foods. And when we're putting foods that have been processed, created in plants in factories, put in cellophane or shrink wrapped, and we're taking it home and consuming that, our bodies really don't know what to do with it. It's very confusing to the brain, and that's why we're having all these diseases happening, because we're introducing these products into our body that they don't know what to do with. They know what to do and how to appropriately engineer and process the single ingredients, but you start putting these factory made foods in, and that it literally causes disease in our body because we were never engineered to eat this food. If you think about it, there's no fat deers in the wild because they're eating foods that their bodies were designed to eat, and they live appropriate to their species. So we really, you're just going to continue to feel better as time
Well,
goes
like you
on.
said, as kids, we all grew up eating fast food,
Totally,
eating chips, eating cookies.
totally.
Just, I mean, it all got into us at an early age, which it's still doing now with the new generation of kids, every generation of kids. So then you grow up, you're like, oh, when I was a kid, I used to eat these hot fries. And now as an adult, oh, I'm craving these hot fries. Or I used to have that in middle school lunches or apple pies that, the hostess, like just everything. Your brain plays tricks on you all the time. So I would love to just take a bite of that right now.
Right. And because of that, we're not living longer, we're dying longer. It's
Yeah.
just we keep people alive and medicated and at a very expensive rate. And that's why I bring it back to our medical system. It will collapse. It cannot continue to support what the world is doing right now. A few weeks ago, a week or two ago, there was a non-partisan Senate hearing led by RFK Jr. It was like 4 hours long of all these experts coming in and talking to this Senate about, hey, this is what is happening in the processed food industry, and we have got to start putting some regulations on this, starting with our children. We are literally dying out here. And so it was very well received. It's on YouTube if anybody wants to look it up, but talk about enlightening. You really
Yeah.
find out what's going on out there.
Yeah. All right, Rick. What else we got?
Here's another question from Terry. And thank you, Terry. Are substitutes for sugar and salt good? Do you use these?
So I started talking a little bit ago. I mentioned that I used to use plant-based sweeteners, and I probably have 1,000 recipes that I created. I have a food blog called Food Fitness by Paige, and I probably have 1,000 recipes on there of desserts made with the monk fruit and things like that, because I was always looking for that third door. I didn't want to give up my drug of choice. Why would I do that if I could try to finagle some way around it, right? So what I found was, even with the stevia and all that, I still was having my sugar binges once or twice a month. And once I started recovery 3.5 years ago, I'm like, I've got to give it up because it's keeping the cravings alive. And so now the desserts that I make, or if you want to call them desserts, are made with like bananas or apples or carrots or blueberries, things like that. That's about as sweet as I get. But you have to remember, once you're off that, your taste buds are not asking you for the same. You literally will have a physical change in your taste buds, in your cravings, and you won't be craving those things anymore. And that first year was pretty tough, but I've got 10 grandkids, and I've got this weekend I had cupcakes and cookies all over me all weekend long, and we were trick-or-treating at Cowtown. I don't know if you remember Cowtown, Adam,
Yeah.
but I mean, so I've been around it all weekend, and it doesn't bother. The further out you get, the sweet doesn't really bother you, but the
Well,
salt.
with the salt, doesn't your body need salt?
Yes. So with the salt, I use a light salt. I still, yeah, I don't have a problem with salt, although you have to be very careful with cross addictions, because some people will switch from that sweet to really craving salt and wanting the chips and things like that. So I just use a light salt. But
Okay.
yes, I do still
All right.
salt.
Terry, would you repeat the name of your blog for people that want to?
You mean Paige?
I'm sorry, Paige. Yes, I was looking at
Yes.
Terry's name on the
Paige,
screen.
yeah.
Yes. Food Fitness by Paige, and I'm on all the social media channels, and of course you can just Google Food Fitness by Paige. It's best viewed on a computer. If you look at it on a phone, you do need to scroll to the bottom and click View Web Version, and it will give you all the options on the phone if you're not on a computer.
Okay,
But Paige, Paige used to make food and bring it to the radio show for us to try without sugar or fat,
Mhm.
anything like that. And I was always going to be skeptical and trying to taste it. I was like, it's not going to taste good. And every single time it tasted good. I was like, I don't know how this is possible. Yeah,
So Missy is posting the name of that blog there in the chat for those of you that want to check it out. Let's look what Sunny Susie says here. She says, I was an elementary teacher for 40 years until I retired 4 years ago. I was shocked the last few years I taught at the number of kids who took home letters from the nurse due to excess weight.
Right. That's right. That's what I'm saying. It's the number one growing area for obesity is in our children. And that's why there's such a strong push towards children, because they get on this pharma treadmill and then they are customers for life. And we've got to make some changes. And let's start with ourselves being a good example, because we control what's in the house. So what can we do?
About this, Paige, think about this too. The kids nowadays, and you can blame food for a lot of things, but when I was a kid, you exercised, you came home from school and you went out and played, and there's no computers, there's no video games. It's a completely different world. So another thing as a parent is, how do I get my kids being addicted to their phone or addicted to a video game, or it's, I mean, it's a different, and you combine the processed food with no exercise, then it's even double, because at least when I was a kid eating bad, I went out and exercise all the time, right? So we're getting backed up on two things.
So statistics are showing that prisoners that get their hour of daylight outdoor time a day are more active than our kids today. So yes, we've got to take some of the contraptions away and shoo kids out the door. And better yet, if as a parent you can go with them, whether it's a walk after dinner, whether it's throwing the ball around, kicking the ball around in the backyard, whether it's signing them up for some sports leagues. But I mean, you just don't come in till dinner, from after school till time for dinner. Just stay outside and play. Give them some chalk, put them on the driveway, teach them how to play hopscotch, give them a hula hoop, whatever it
Really,
takes. But they need
teach
to
them how to
move.
play pickleball. That's the sport for life. Everybody can play pickleball your whole life.
That would do it.
Yeah.
That would do it. You want to talk?
Here's another question, Paige. Do you use supplements? That's from Terry.
So I, living in Kansas, most people do take a vitamin D. And so I do take a vitamin D, and also I do a B complex. But other than that, for people that have a well-balanced diet, I really prefer, and it's probably just as healthy, that you just get your nutrition through your foods. And if you are eating a diet that is the fruits, the vegetables, the lean proteins, the legumes, the grains, you're going to be getting the macro and micronutrients that you need through your foods in general. And do your lab work every year and see where you are on that. But for the most part, I think you can take care of those needs through a well-balanced diet.
Okay. Any more on that? Or Paige, you want to talk about something different?
No, I mean, a lot of times people are like, that's terrifying to start with getting off sugar, because I'm afraid of it. It's going to hurt me. I don't want to give up my drug of choice. Can you really go through Thanksgiving without pie, or Christmas without cookies, or birthdays without cake? All of that is possible, and you have to be ready to do it. But your life is just so exponentially better, where when you're in the throes of addiction, your addiction is always scanning the room. It's always working the room. It's always trying to figure out when you're negotiating your day around when I can get my next fix. And the problem with that is you're never 110% fully present with the people you love, your job, whatever. When I used to work in the medical intensive care unit, this was, gosh, back in the 90s, there were women, some of the nurses smoked, and it was amazing how the nurses that smoked, they could somehow, you were allowed 2 cigarettes or 2 breaks, 2 15-minute breaks a day. I never had time to take mine, but the smokers, somehow they were able to organize their day and make sure that they had time to take their breaks. But when you have an addiction, it really is what determines your schedule, your day. And you don't want to be in bonds to anything determining how your day looks other than you. So
Yeah.
that's the problem. You want to find a way out. And so where do you start? You want to talk about that for people that
Yeah.
where
How would
start?
you start that process? I don't even, that's
And
gotta be.
I love that question. And so again, if anybody wants to look at our website, therealfoodrecovery4u.com, that's the number 4 and the letter U. We talk about our 4 cornerstones of the food, sleep, movement, and spirituality. So you don't always have to start with food. Maybe start with sleep, because for me, sleep and food are almost the same thing. Because if I don't have my appropriate hours of shut eye, I just am a mess. I mean, I can't even think straight the next day. I like to get 8.5 hours of sleep a night. It's gotten more as I've gotten older, but 9 sometimes, depending on what my physicality is, because I work out every day. I pedal hard all day long. I'm wiped out and I need that recovery time. But so it doesn't always have to be with your food. But let's say you do want to start with your food. Other than sugar, maybe you want to say, I'm going to just start with a clean breakfast, a non-processed clean breakfast. Maybe I want to start with my snacks, lunch, or dinner, but you have a little bit of flexibility. Other than sugar, you do have to go cold turkey off that, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And the problem with overwhelm, it has a sneaky story that everything has to be done right now perfectly, or you're a total failure. So that's again where a support group, a support team
Yeah.
comes in.
I kind of deal with that too with some of my clients with accountable, because they have a certain goal that they want to achieve, and we break down their day, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, and then what do we do in our 8 hours of our personal space? And sometimes we have a great plan in place, and you know how days go by and things don't go your way and things get in the way, or this changes, and then you don't get to check off some of those goals that you had put down. Then the next day you feel like, oh my gosh, I failed at this. I'm done with this. I screwed it up. Instead of being like, okay, well, today's a new day. We're going to go jump right back on that horse and try to go again today to see what we can accomplish. Because I think sometimes we get discouraged. I don't know what type of brain, A brain or B brain, but some people are way more organized in their head and are very strict on stuff. And when things don't go that way, they have a tendency to overthink, overreact. And so I don't know if it's like that with food too.
Yes, and so one of the things that we help people with is come up with a value list. What's your value system? And when you're feeling like, I'm uncomfortable, something's not right, generally you're living outside your value system. So if you would like to work on a values list, that helps to see if you're in a line, if your life is in line with the what you value in your life. And so that's just another trick to help you. And like I said, you've got to be ready. You got to have a strong why, and it can't be to lose weight. That is never ever going to get you to where you want to be. And the reason is because if weight loss is your only goal, when you come to a craving, you're going to be like, I'll worry about that tomorrow. So you've got to have a stronger why. You've got to either, not that weight loss isn't part of it. I never deny that. And honestly, that's what actually prompts most people to get started, is they want to lose weight. But, health goals, playing on the ground with your children or grandchildren, maybe you want to be healthier, cardiovascular. You may want to have a goal with
Or you hate
accomplishing something.
hospital, so you'll do anything to stay out of a hospital, because
That's what I'm
there's that.
saying.
I've heard that one before too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is, so that weight loss, just if that's your only goal, you're going to have a hard time
Yeah.
sticking to change. But I say that I only have one rule when I'm working with people, and it's just don't give up. That's you, because you're, like I said when we first started, life is going to kick you in the teeth. Just plan on that. But the good thing is that we are a soft place to fall, and we figure out tools and skills of when that happens, and the art of reframe comes in to play. So whatever you think, however you look at things, that's your reality in your brain. But the gift is you can reframe those thoughts to make them more palatable to the brain. Why does that matter? Because whenever we're kinder to ourselves, we're more apt to stick with our goals. No one has ever hated themselves into recovery. So self compassion is huge. And again, that's where skilled professionals can help you with that too, because so easy to beat yourself up, right?
Yeah.
You're
Give
the
yourself
hardest. You're the hardest person that will ever be
on
on
yourself.
yourself.
Yeah.
Totally, totally. So the art of reframe, that and staying in a place of gratitude are the things that will get you further faster than
Yeah.
anything. And do you want, why that's so hard? Do you know why we're hard on ourselves? Do you know the answer to that question?
No. Why are we hard on ourselves?
We are actually wired to the negative. And do you know why we're wired to the negative?
Nope.
It's a survival mechanism. So back in the Stone Age days, if you saw your tribe running, you didn't stand there and ask questions. Hey, buddy, what's everybody doing? You just ran, right? So that is part of our survival system being wired to the negative. If the saber-toothed tiger is coming and you see everybody around you running, your brain knows you just need to run too. And this isn't the time for conversation. We can have conversations when we're up on the hill, but now,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
now,
We're wrong.
so
Yeah. All right. Any
that
more questions, Paul?
Yeah, Adam, why don't you take this one first and then turn it over to Paige? One of our optimists says, I'm obese and a smoker. Where do I start health wise? That's a
so
good accountable question too, Paige. Let's let Adam go first and then you pick it up from there.
Obese and a smoker. Wow,
Mhm.
those are two big addictions. I feel like you're. Why do you want to stop those two things? Do you realize being obese and smoking together are going to shorten your life, and you want to live longer? What's your why with that? How long have you been obese, and how long have you smoked? And are you willing to? My question that I ask my accountable clients is, are you willing to suffer and have self-discipline? Because if you don't have self-discipline or not willing to suffer, suffering is such a hard thing for us, because it comes with pain, and we always try to avoid pain. But for me, as long as you know that there's going to be some hardships and suffering going along with it, to start that is a mindset. So I would start with a mindset of what we're going to do to stop those two things, and then change over to the things you're going to replace that with. What about you, Paige?
I would say my answer is just simple. It's what's killing you most. Which of those two things is killing you the most? And then I would also tell you to choose your hard. So I don't, being obese and smoking is hard. So, and suffering is hard. So you choose whatever you think is going, choose your heart. Basically, you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, but one of the things I do tell my accountable, because we're just really straightforward and honest. We've got used our life, a lot of part of our life, to have all this enjoyment of smoking and all this enjoyment of eating the wrong foods and getting all this pleasure, years and years and years of pleasure. Then you're going to go at least 6 months to a year with none of that. None of those pleasures are going to be around, and it's going to be uncomfortable. How comfortable are you with about being uncomfortable and knowing in your brain, I did all this, and I spent years doing all this, so now I'm going to have to pay a price for doing that. by taking away all these things that you used to have pleasure and things doing. So it's good. It's definitely, for me, it would be a mindset that you're going to have to allow yourself grace to, but definitely a mindset to change.
Yeah. In recovery for us, we work with people to develop the skills that will help them overcome impulse control. And that's what recovery
Yep. Yep.
is freedom from impulse control.
Paige, would you name your website again so Missy can post that in
Sure.
the comments?
It's real food recovery for you.com. So that's the number 4 and the letter U. Real Food Recovery. And Real Food Recovery is the name of our podcast and all of our social media platforms as well.
Very good. And Missy has a question too. Any word on gluten?
If you're gluten intolerant, don't do it. If you're not gluten intolerant, do it.
Oh my God.
So it's just a question of if you're intolerant. Other than that, it's not a health concern.
No.
I can tell you this, the last
Adam,
3
what's
weeks,
your experience with
the
it?
last 3 months I've been gluten free. I feel way better than I did when I was eating gluten. I don't know why. My body, maybe inflammation, but I feel better. My body looks better. And I hate not being able to have sourdough bread with butter, or I mean that, like hot sourdough bread with butter. I would rather have that than cookie and cake.
So that bread, I don't eat that naturally because I don't eat processed food like that. So I don't typically have gluten anyway.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
so I don't know what it's like. I'm not I'm not a big gluten eater. But so I also go back to I have a big theory on try it and see what happens.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, just get off of it, see, and then so that's what we do. We try something, and then we're just one long system of edits. We just can you start somewhere, and then you just edit through the rest of your life,
Right.
making changes as necessary.
With a little discipline here, Ana Franco has a comment for celebrations. She says, my sister has a 2-bite rule on the pie, cake, sweets.
So some go ahead, Adam, were you wanting to say something?
No, I'm the same way. I can take 1 bite or 2 bites and be good with it now.
Yeah. So that means you're low on the addiction spectrum. For people that have a true addiction, that would not work. So people, I mean, I can't take 1 or 2 bites. I don't even know what that means. I mean, I can take 1 or 2 rows of Girl Scout cookies, but I don't have. So let me explain about what that happens in the brain. So if something's addictive if you put it in your mouth and it goes upstairs instead of downstairs. So if you take a bite of something and it just goes straight up, all the reactions are felt up here. You know what it's like to have a rush that says, I don't care what you have to do. You might have to kill a man, but you've got to get another bite of XYZ. Don't let anything, I don't eat that donut out of the trash. It doesn't matter. Nobody's in the room. You would do anything. That's what your brain is saying. It because you don't have rational thought. You do not have access to that breaking point of the frontal lobe. When the center brain is running the show, you're in big trouble because you're going to do things that you would not normally do. That's what a true addict looks like. Other people can swallow, it goes down their gut, and everything happens in the digestive system. And then you're working with things called ghrelin and leptin that work naturally. They tell you when you've had enough or when you need to eat. That's a natural system. And that always takes place when you're eating those single ingredient foods. Things are working as God designed your body to work. But when you're eating processed foods, specifically sugar, then the brain just says more, 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 more. And if you ask any drug addict, what do they want? And the answer is always more, whatever the drug is. But the answer is what I'm addicted to is more. So that's people that can take a bite or two. They are not truly on the food addiction spectrum, and good for them.
Wait, Rex, can you eat a whole gallon of Bluebell ice cream, vanilla Bluebell ice cream?
It would take me about 3 months to do that.
So you're little at a time too, then.
Yeah, or I don't want it around.
Yeah, my husband is like that too. Nothing makes me madder at him than one or two bites of this or that. Just
Yeah.
rookie. He's a rookie.
I like.
Yeah, I can do that. Mary Curie says, I bought these two books, Pure White and Deadly and Good Sugar, Bad Sugar. They both really opened my eyes and are like my Bible. So,
Can I recommend Tucker Carlson interviewed Callie and Casey Means as well as Joe Rogan. If you want to listen to those podcasts, you will be floored, as well as go to YouTube and Google RFK Jr. The Senate hearing. That's
Yeah.
it'll blow your mind.
so there's no shortage of people talking and writing about it. There are a lot of resources, in other words, including your website, your blog. So good, a lot of good information here. We're this is a comment I think reflects a lot of us as we wind down here in the last 9 minutes, Adam. Terry
Yeah.
said I'll be watching this over and over. Really good information.
So
great.
is it harder as a kid who maybe has gone 10 years, maybe a 15-year-old to stop the food process of being addicted to food, or is it harder when you're 50, or is it the same?
Yes. So it's a different set of circumstances, right? When you're young, you want to fit in with the tribe. You want to go out for pizza. You want to be at the birthday parties and doing all that. And so I, tell my story about I was on the dessert only diet until I was 40 and could always control my weight because I was such a heavy exerciser. But as I started in with the premenopause, I could no longer out exercise my calories, and I started gaining weight that I never had before through that body change, that time period of my life. And so it only became harder as I got older because of my vanity, and I could no longer keep up with the weight. And usually your body's pretty forgiving when you're young, so you can get away with a little bit more, like with stretching at the end of exercise. I got to do it now or I'm going to get an injury. Stretching covers a multitude of sins. But so as you get older, the problems are, I think you've got greater health risks.
I do know. I don't know if Rex does this, but there's other people. I think I've heard Rex even say this. Some people would go to a restaurant and they will eat dessert first,
Oh, man.
just so after they start eating their food, they won't be too full to have dessert. They want to make sure they get their dessert first, and then whatever happens after the meal is fine.
Yeah. I've gone and just ordered dessert. Screw the meal.
Yeah.
Why bother with those extra calories? Or if I wanted cupcakes, I would just eat the lid off and throw the bottom half away because I was being
Yeah.
calorie smart.
Yeah. I'm there for the frosting anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I rarely eat
Exactly.
desserts in restaurants because I make desserts that I like better. But if I'm
Yeah.
going to eat dessert, I will eat it first.
A Marie Callender's strawberry pie. Rex will eat a whole thing.
No, I'll eat one piece because I like it too much to eat the whole thing. But then I won't want it anymore.
That's good. One other thing, real quick. So we're talking about food, and I've learned a couple of things about blood sugars and foods that if you eat in order about losing weight and those things. So if you have a plate and you have protein, you have fats, and you have carbs, if you eat the protein first and then you eat the fat after that, and then you eat the carbs last, the
Yeah.
blood sugar doesn't spike as much. And
Yeah.
people are like, wait, it matters what order I eat in? Because I like to have, some people go right for the mashed potatoes first, then the rolls, and then after that, turkey's last, and then the blood sugar just goes crazy.
Yeah, it's just escaping me the name of that type of eating. It's not systematic eating. It's oh shoot, I can't remember the name of it. But yes, that is one method that people do try. And here's my opinion. Whatever keeps things quiet in the brain, great. Find whatever plan. Which is why at Real Food Recovery we don't We don't recommend any. We don't recommend vegan. We don't recommend carnivore. Whatever it is that keeps things quiet in the brain, this is a brain disease. So if you see people that are overweight, they don't have a weight problem. They have an addiction problem. So weight problem is just a byproduct of a brain problem that's going on. So whatever keeps things quiet in the brain and calm, that's what we encourage you to do. And I know we're about out of time and we haven't talked about this, but there is a huge correlation between our diets and mental health. We're talking about depression and anxiety. Like I said, Alzheimer's 3 is now, they're calling it diabetes 3. Huge mental impact on processed food.
Which brings up this question. We can make this the last question here from Missy, our moderator. Does a child with food addictions directly relate to trauma? No.
Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't know because every situation is different. I wouldn't, all my childhood traumas were small, cheap traumas, nothing. I had a pretty leave it to beaver growing up, but I just know, I think I was born addicted because it does matter what the mothers eat when they're pregnant. I love sugar from my earliest memory. If I had had a perfect life, my whole life, I am very sensitive to sugar, and I think I would have been addicted no matter what. But the propensity to have food addictions with children with capital T traumas, for sure, there is generally a correlation there because as children, that's a drug they can have access to, especially if it's in the home. You aren't going to find them throwing back martinis at 7 or whatever like
right.
that. So that's a way for them to self-soothe, and nobody's really watching that, or they can sneak food easily. Like I said, especially if it's easily accessible to them.
Yeah.
I said one more question. How about this? How about one more? Jan Wright asks, do you ever recommend Overeaters Anonymous?
So we just recommend our program, but if you, again, I have this opinion, if you try it and that's what trips your trap and that does it for you, then I just want to be part of the solution. So I'd love for you to come and see us. But if Overeaters Anonymous is what would do it for you, then give it a try. That's the only way that you'll find out is if you give it a try. And I've heard a lot of people say, take what you like and leave the rest. So I think it gets you part of the way there. Our program is different than anything I've ever seen because it takes a holistic approach to it. And I also think this is a spiritual crisis as well as just a health food crisis. So I think we need to look deep inside our souls too and really examine what's going on there. And the food, we need to realize we're in partnership with everything we put in our mouth, and it's making up our cells. Our genetic expression is based on what we eat every single day. That makes up who we are as people down to a cellular level. We literally are what we eat. And I think that is a spiritual process.
That's a good thought to summarize with. We have realfoodrecovery4u.com on the screen. Boy, this has been eye-opening, and we certainly appreciate it, Paige. Adam?
Yeah. I'm glad we got to have Paige on. We'll probably have her on again. She'll be
Come back.
I'm sure we'll have plenty of questions and other people that have ideas but one thing that I want to make sure that we all understand, Paige has mentioned this a few times, and I mention this to people all the time, is that our body and our brain and our spirit are all connected.
That's right.
And so my whole thing that I preach is balance, balance, balance. As you know, you came to this, podcast because of Lori and Chad, and Lori going overboard with spiritual things was a malfunction and
I
mental
agree.
and all that. And so no matter what you do in life, if you're a bookworm and you sit on the couch for 12 hours and do nothing but read books and you don't go work out and you eat bad, or so there's three components that I really would love for everybody to balance out in your life: spiritual, mental, and physical. All three of them, give them the same energy every day. And the more balanced you stay, the happier you're going to be. And I feel like we all are trying just to be happy. Happy is a great thing to be. A happy place is a great place to be. And so balancing those three things will really balance you out to make you happier. I'm not going to say you're not going to have bad days, but it will really help. It will really help you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about the sunlight shining in your eyes. We all need sunlight, but if it's directly in your eyes, think about when you're driving, you almost, it's too much. If you get too much, it's blinding, right? So balance. Yep.
Yep.
Good place to close. Thank you very much. Thank you, Adam.
Yes.
Thanks to all of our optimists and the people that made comments.
Yes, thank you. I'd love to come back and chat anytime.
Thanks, Paige.
And we'll have another live next Saturday at our usual time of 4:30 Mountain, 3:30 Pacific time with Brian Pace, who runs a horse ranch for therapy. Equine therapy is what I was trying to think. So we'll see y'all next Saturday.
Guys, bye-bye.